Welcome back. Now, South Africa has asked the World Trade Organization to set up two panels to adjudicate disputes over its export of the citrus fruit to the European Union. South Africa disagrees with the European Union measures taken against its exports to combat incidents of the citrus black spot, a fungal disease, and to combat the spread of the false codling moth, which damages the fruit. Now, the request is the first ever by South Africa under the World Trade Organization's dispute settlement system. South Africa exports about 32 billion rand of citrus a year. Joining us now to discuss this, I'd like to welcome the CEO of the Citrus Growers Association, Justin Chadwick. Mr. Chadwick, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us here on Talking Point on Hilaal TV.
Good evening, and thanks for the opportunity.
No, it's an absolute pleasure. Mr. Chadwick, just your initial response to the World Trade, obviously South Africa approaching the World Trade Organization with regards to this, because I know this has been a dispute that has been going on for quite some time.
Yeah, we're very pleased that the government has taken the step. One must understand that this is it's instituted by the government, so by the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. So we really appreciate Minister Patel taking the step and Minister Didiza supporting him. So it's basically a government to government activity. And as you said, we have been waiting for a long time. There are two matters that are being addressed. One is false codling moth and the other is citrus black spot. And we've been living with having to comply with the EU regulations for a long time now.
Let's break down both of them, Mr. Chadwick. I'm going to start off with the citrus black spot. I had Mr. Joubert, who's one of your colleagues from the Citrus Growers Organization. He explained in detail with regards to just how a controversial a topic this is from a European Union perspective. But, for any of the viewers who've been living under the rock and they consume citrus, but they don't know, the actual black spot and why this is contentious from the European Union, maybe give them an idea with regards to this and why this is something that the European Union deems as a problem from their side.
Yeah, I think the first thing is to stress that we have no problem with countries looking after their domestic industry. So, if there's a definite risk in terms of transmission of a disease from South Africa or a pest from South Africa to another country, then that other country must take whatever measures they have to in order to stop that from happening. In the case of citrus black spot, it's a fungus that's found on the surface of the fruit, so it's in no ways in the fruit itself, and it's not harmful to humans at all. It's a fungus, and the fungus cannot be transmitted on the fruit. So the fruit's not a pathway. In other words, if you have black spot on the fruit and you take that across to Europe, there is no ways that can then establish in a European orchard. And I think that is the basis and the most important reason why we have been saying that the measures that the EU have in place are incorrect and are unjustified. We export fruit. We don't export fruit with leaves. We don't export fruit with twigs or stems attached to them. And therefore, if there is citrus black spot or the fungus on the fruit, it will not establish in Europe. And all the experts in the world come to that same conclusion. The only people that don't are a group of scientists in Europe who have only studied citrus black spot in the library and not in its reality. Our scientists have been brought up with citrus black spot. We've studied it. As an industry, we spend over 200 million rand a year on research into these pests and diseases that affect our industry. So that is our gripe. We don't believe that the EU's science and their grappling of the science is correct, and hence the call firstly for consultations on the matter. We are hoping that in the consultation process, both sides would find each other and the EU would realize that their science is not strong. But the consultations yielded nothing, and so now, hence the process we're going forward now in terms of asking for the formation of a panel.
False codling moth, it's something that, of course, damages a fruit. Talk to us about that. I mean, is that a very similar contestation that the European Union is having with regards to the citrus black spot also?
Yeah, false codling moth's a little bit different. It's obviously an insect. It lays eggs and becomes larvae in the fruit. It became a quarantine pest in the EU in 2018, so very recently. And countries that exported to the EU that had false codling moth, like ourselves and many West African countries, where false codling moth is a host for, amongst others, peppers, roses, flowers, etc. We were given time to develop a system to ensure that no live false codling moth were in the fruit. And South Africa developed an amazing system, and it was a system that was based on the risk of each consignment. So it wasn't a one size fits all. We would, through the system, establish whether the consignment had any risks. And the higher the risk, the more cold treatment that we applied to that consignment. So it was, in terms of its impact on the environment and on the use of energy, etc., it was very efficient. And it actually yielded great results. The number of false codling moth interceptions in Europe dropped dramatically. Just to give you an example, we went down to about 3 or 4 consignments. We're talking about maybe 3 or 4 pieces of fruit out of 800,000 tons of fruit. We don't in any way say that false codling moth cannot go with the fruit. What we're saying is that the system that we had in place before they instituted new measures was sufficient. The EU then decided to bring in their own measures and required us to then ship at certain temperatures all consignments, regardless of risk. And this is our contestation, is that this is totally unnecessary. There are other measures that we were already using, and we were actually improving on them every year, that gave them the same, if not better, level of risk mitigation. And therefore, the application of these new measures, which uses more energy, costs more money, were unnecessary.
Mr. Chadwick, Spain, of course, is the #1 leader when it comes to citrus exporting. Uh, from your conversations with, if you do have, with, your counterparts in that part of the world, has there been very similar challenges with them with regards to their exporting of citrus? I know it's a double-barrel question because they are part of the European Union, but uh, are they having very similar problems with regards to the black spots and the codling moths?
Yeah, so Spain has neither CBS nor FCM, hence their concern about us sending fruit there, and their concern about the establishment of either of those pests in their orchards. You must remember that Spain sits in the middle of the EU, and they export 95% of their exports going to Europe. So it's the same as us, say, sending it into Swaziland or Zimbabwe. It's just across the fence. So that's where their exports go. And the Spanish industry is an interesting industry. We've got very good relationships with the lemon and grapefruit sector in Spain, but not such good relations with the mandarin and orange sector. And it doesn't really make sense, because we should be the best of friends. I mean, we are counter-seasonal, which means that our fruit goes into the market when their fruit isn't there, and vice versa. And we should be actually working extremely closely together to make sure that there's good quality citrus fruit on the shelves all year round. And we do that in the lemon and grapefruit sector. We reached out to the Spanish orange and mandarin sector, and we've got various initiatives that we are following up to try and build a close relationship with them, because at the end of the day, we all trying to get people to eat more citrus. That's our bottom line, and us in Spain should, as I say, be the best of friends.
One final question, Mr. Chadwick. 32 billion rand a year. I mean, that's massive, given all the challenges that our economy has had, the jobs that need to be protected. I'm sure from a CGA point of view, you just want this to be resolved as soon as possible, isn't it? And it's down to the World Trade Organization to make sure that they can do that.
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, that we were hoping the consultations would bring about some result, because when you go to court, which in effect we're doing, you start spending money, firstly, and we're doing it in Geneva, so it's not a cheap exercise. And number two, it takes a long time now. The panel process which we're going into will take up to 6 months. So we still will have to see this season out. Compliance costs for FCM and CBS are in excess of 3.7 billion rand a year. So a large amount of the revenue that we earn as an industry is actually spent on complying with these unnecessary and unjustified measures.
Mr. Chadwick, thank you so much for joining us here on Talking Point on Hilaal TV. Much appreciated.
Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure. That's Justin Chadwick. He is the CEO of the Citrus Growers Organization. That's all we have for you here on Talking Point. From myself, Ross Patel, and the rest of the team in Johannesburg. We'll see you again tomorrow for a 1-hour extended Talking Point. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.